Donald Trump got torn to shreds at the Munich Security Conference. I think the superstar of this conference was the European Union Foreign Affairs Chief, Kaja Kallas. She was given just jab after jab, knockout punch after knockout punch in Donald Trump. And she's like, do not lecture us about free speech. I don't need to hear that from the United States, which is like 58th on the list of like countries that are free. Like you don't lecture the EU. Here, watch this. Let's play it.
You know, coming from a country that is number 2 in the press freedom index, hearing criticism regarding press freedom coming from a country that is 58 on this list, it's interesting.
And then she says, let's be very clear what we're going to be doing in the European Union. We're going to be supporting Ukraine. If Trump and the U.S. is doing whatever the heck it's doing and supporting Russia, we're standing firm. Here, play this clip.
How I see it is very simple. Russia's maximalist demands cannot be met with minimalist response. Think about it. If Ukraine's military is to be limited in size, Russia should be too. Where Russia has caused damage in Ukraine, Russia should pay. No amnesty for war crimes, return of the Ukrainian deported children. This is really the very least Russia should agree if peace is Russia's goal.
Then you got to hear from Denmark's Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, and she's drawing clear, bright lines, clear red lines. Look, you're going to go after NATO nations? Say goodbye to NATO. Enough is enough. Stop this crap. Say goodbye to NATO. Here, play this clip.
Talking about defense, how likely is it that you're going to have to defend Greenland?
So nice to be on stage with you.
Thank you.
And nice to be with my allies and my friends and my partners. Well, let me put it this way. I mean, if one NATO country attacks another NATO country, then NATO ends.
It's game over.
Then it's game over. So I hope I answer your question.
Yeah, these women leaders at this Munich Security Conference were crushing it. That's why we need more women leaders of countries out there. Also, you have Polish Prime Minister Tusk was mocking Donald Trump's desire for Nobel Peace Prizes. Trump's like, he's like, I'm not really sure the Nobel Peace Prize is going to even be enough right now. Here, play this clip.
When it comes to this special award for the Ukrainian nation, frankly speaking, for Ukraine, there's no prize, good enough prize, I think. Even the Nobel Peace Prize would be not enough. I'm absolutely sure that you deserve something more. And, just one remark. Some say that Ukraine should be grateful for everything. The truth is exactly the opposite. The rest of us should be grateful to Ukraine.
And Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez was out there, I thought, very strong. Here's what he had to say. Let's play it.
We need to stop Putin. We need to strengthen our deterrence capabilities, but let us do it in a coordinated and targeted way that we can control. Let's build a true European army, not in 10 years, but now. Spain will join with all the resources that are needed. Let's strengthen our multilateral system, reforming and empowering those institutions that, despite their flaws, have succeeded in maintaining peace in the West for decades. And also, let's invest in the values of solidarity, empathy, and cooperation that have brought us this far. Because the rearmament that we most urgently need in the world is a moral one.
And Polish Foreign Minister Sikorski says, look, if the U.S. is going to abandon Ukraine, we're not going anywhere. And if anything, we'll increase our role, but we ain't going anywhere. Here, play this clip.
Europe, what we should say is that if the US forces Ukraine into an unfair deal, we will continue with our commitment to Ukraine, and it is Ukraine that will decide when to make a deal. And then we will not be able to be ignored by Putin, because we will then become the main provider.
I want to bring in right now Democratic Senator Mark Warner over from Virginia. He sits as the vice chair, basically the top Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee. I want to speak with him. He's in Munich right now. And I want to talk to him about the Munich conference, and I want to speak with him as well about just all of the intelligence breaches that are taking place within the United States and how our intelligence agencies cannot be trusted. I'll start by talking about what went on in Fulton County, because you've got Americans sending Tulsi Gabbard to take a look straight out of like Orban or Putin, sending her to be there to seize 2020 voter data as part of, unhinged conspiracies to try to rig the midterms here. This is a great interview, and we go deep into foreign policy, which I love, especially with everything that went on in the Munich conference here. Let's bring in that interview. Senator, great to see you. I want to talk about what's going on right now as many suspect what a lot of this, ICE surge is about. Also, what we're seeing in Fulton County, with this affidavit of very curious propriety where they were able to raid the facilities where the 2020 ballots were being held. Is a broader plan here as we approach the midterms. Trump's polling right now is in the gutter, like the worst in history. And he's doing what desperate despots do. And he's starting to, he's saying things like, I don't know about these midterms, or, I'm going to think about putting ICE around it. And then you start to see these actions like unfolding, and people are really worried. I mean, you sit on the Intelligence Committee, you've got a great deal of perspective around here. What do you make of all of this, and how do we stop it?
Well, first of all, Ben, a year ago when people said, "Hey, Warner, do you think there's going to be problems with the midterms?" I said no. I didn't take it as seriously at that point. And then all of a sudden you see Trump come in and throw everything possible at the wall. A year later, I am more terrified than ever that this guy who can't get over the fact he lost in 2020 is terrified again with his name not on the ballot, losing in 26. And I think we got to be on full guard. And let me just take 2 minutes and say what happened in Fulton County. First of all, to go way back in history, the last president that tried to mess this much in the electoral process was Richard Nixon. And after Watergate, there were all these rules, regulations, norms put in place that said, the president shouldn't be involved in domestic activities. He shouldn't be involved in criminal activities of the Department of Justice. Our intelligence services ought to be outward looking and not inward looking at Americans. So we put a whole bunch of rules and laws in place. Almost all of those are being violated. Let's talk about the first one, which I think folks haven't really focused on that much. How in the hell did Donald Trump even know that this search warrant was going to be issued? That's not appropriate for a president to intervene in the Department of Justice. We all know this, a Pam Bondi is the opposite of Department of Justice. But there's foul number one. Foul number two, he then calls Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard is the director of national intelligence. She has no responsibility at all for, election security other than trying to prevent foreigners from interfering in our elections. And she sure as hell doesn't care about that, because she has helped oversee the dismantling of all of the election security foreign line influence centers at her office, at the FBI. They've cut the cybersecurity agency by 1/3 on election security. So here's somebody who then comes down, shows up creeping around this effort to pick up these court records, kind of furtively wearing a hat, kind of looking like she's, super spy. And she then says, "Oh, I got asked by the president." Then the president throws her under the bus and says, "No, he didn't ask her." And she's scrambling. She then says, "Well, I've got this statutory authority," which, by the way, is only outward facing. We finally get the underlying request for the search warrant opened. And you're right, man, it's some